You walk into a familiar grocery store. Bright lights, polished floors, endless rows of color. Shelves look full. Music hums softly above the quiet rhythm of carts. It feels normal, safe. But what you're seeing is a snapshot held together by thin, invisible threads that are starting to snap. The real danger is not waking up to bare shelves overnight. It's a slow, grinding crisis slipping into your cart. Shrinking packages, unstable prices, gaps where staples should be, and a quiet rewriting of what an ordinary family can afford. This isn't drama or doom, it's data. Supply math, policy, and profit colliding. Stay with this, because next we'll expose how this crisis is building in plain sight, which foods break first, and what you can do before it explodes into your weekly shopping. If there's really a crisis coming, why do your shelves still look full? Because the modern grocery system is built on just-in-time supply. Products arrive only when needed, from far-flung sources, with almost no backup. It's efficient, it's profitable, and it's fragile. One small break no longer stays small. It ripples through shipping lanes, processing plants, and distribution hubs until it lands in your store as higher prices, missing brands, or thinner options. Three forces are tightening together. Long, delicate chains with few alternatives, overlapping shocks from climate, conflict, and energy, and corporate choices, consolidation, cost-cutting, financial pressure that smooth risk today while amplifying it tomorrow. This isn't cinematic collapse. It's a deep shift where reliable staples turn volatile, and millions slide into quiet food insecurity. When we talk about a silent food crisis, we are not talking about famine, breadlines, or empty frozen aisles. We are talking about something slower and more intimate, the steady erosion of affordability, stability, and real choice, while everything around you still pretends to be normal. You have already felt it. The cereal box that used to last a week now empties in days, even as the price creeps up. The family-sized chips that vanish in one sitting. Store-brand pasta one price on Monday, another on Friday. Eggs that jump, drop, then jump higher. Olive oil that costs so much you hesitate. Favorite staples suddenly marked temporarily unavailable. This is shrinkflation. Less product for the same or higher price. It is skimpflation. Cheaper ingredients, more fillers, lower quality and familiar packaging. A bottle quietly losing ounces. Bread with lower-grade grains. Sauces bulked up with starch and sugar. Not clever tweaks, stress signals. Behind every smaller box and thinned-out recipe are rising costs for fertilizer, fuel, feed, packaging, shipping, and labor. Global sourcing that leans on distant farms and fragile shipping lanes. Farmers and small producers squeezed by higher inputs and powerful buyers. They cannot absorb repeated shocks, so inch by inch, the damage moves into your cart. Most people adapt without calling it a crisis. They switch to whatever is on sale, drop berries for canned fruit, real cheese for processed slices, whole foods for calorie-dense, nutrient-poor options. They chase discounts and accept that some things are just too expensive now. Shelves look stocked. Underneath, diets hollow out, stress rises, and quiet food insecurity spreads. These are not random glitches. They are early warnings from a system that can't absorb sustained strain without offloading the cost onto you. To see where this leads, we have to open the black box and trace how food really moves from soil and sea to that perfectly lit shelf. To understand how fragile your grocery store really is, follow a single item backwards. Take a basic loaf of bread. It starts with seeds bred and sold by a few major companies. Those seeds need fertilizer from natural gas, fuel for tractors, water from stressed rivers, pesticides, machinery, and labor. Wheat is harvested, loaded onto trucks that need drivers and diesel, sent to grain elevators and rail lines, then on to mills that grind it into flour. From there, it moves to bakeries that rely on gas or electricity, packaging suppliers, more trucks, and finally into a distribution center that feeds many stores. Only at the very end does it land, wrapped on your shelf. Every step has been tuned for speed and cost. Inventory is minimal. Backup suppliers are limited. That efficiency looks brilliant when everything works, and dangerous when one link misfires. Imagine a fertilizer plant shuts down, or an exporter restricts shipments. Farmers pay more or plant less. Months later, wheat prices rise. A drought hits another region that usually fills the gap. Fuel prices spike, raising the cost of every mile grain and flour travel. A mill pauses operations. A bakery slows. Storms delay ships at a crucial port. Your store does not run out of bread forever. It gets fewer deliveries, fewer brands, more expensive loaves. Sometimes the cheapest options are gone. A tag, a limit, a gap. The same pattern appears with meat if feed shipments stall, or oil if an export hub is hit, a fertilizer hiccup, a shipping bottleneck, a plant closure, a flooded rail line, a policy change. Alone, none look catastrophic. But this system depends on all of them working, all the time. When multiple links strain at once, storms, conflict, fuel costs, thin labor, retailers have few levers: raise prices, cut promotions, limit restocks, narrow choice. The shelf holds something, but less of what you want, at a sharper price. The question is no longer whether one link might break, but why breaks are more frequent, longer, and broader, and what is driving that escalation. The next pressure point is the one we like to dismiss as just bad weather. It isn't just weather anymore. For decades, staple crops like wheat, corn, and soy followed predictable patterns. Seasons cycled, yields rose, and if one region struggled, another usually filled the gap. That stability built the quiet confidence behind every stocked aisle. Now that foundation is cracking. Climate volatility is turning stable crops unstable. Heat waves cook fields before they mature. Prolonged droughts drain reservoirs and aquifers. Sudden floods drown seedlings and wash away topsoil. Late frosts hit orchards in bloom. Shifting seasons confuse plants, pests, and pollinators. These are direct hits on the volume and reliability of what becomes your bread, cereal, meat, oil, fruits, and vegetables. When a major grain belt faces drought, the world loses a chunk of wheat and corn that feeds people and animals. When water restrictions slam vegetable regions, there are fewer tomatoes, lettuces, peppers, berries. When storms or cold snaps wipe out citrus or berry crops, you feel it months later as higher prices, weaker discounts, favorites turned luxuries. In a tightly connected system, bad harvests don't stay local. Global markets set reference prices. If one exporter's wheat fails, buyers bid up what remains. Those higher prices feed into your bread, pasta, snacks, beer. If soy drops, feed costs rise, flowing into eggs, chicken, pork, dairy, farmed fish. Shocks in some other country quietly rewrite your price tags. What used to be once-in-a-decade disasters now arrive in overlapping waves. Drought one year, floods the next, sometimes both in key regions at once. Buffers shrink. Inventories thin. Governments answer with export bans or hoarding, tightening global supply further. On your end, it looks like stubborn inflation and shrinking portions. This is how weather becomes a price weapon, not by intent but by consequence. A more chaotic climate drives a more chaotic grocery bill, especially in a system stripped of slack. And the pressure does not stop at the crops. The inputs needed to grow, move, and process that food are being squeezed too, adding another layer of instability to everything in your cart. Long before a price tag appears on a shelf, the cost of your food is being written in places you never see, in natural gas contracts, fertilizer plants, diesel tanks, feed mills, and power grids. Modern yields depend heavily on synthetic fertilizer made from natural gas. When gas prices spike, fertilizer becomes more expensive. When fertilizer factories shut down or cut output, supply tightens and prices jump. Faced with those costs, many farmers use less, plant fewer acres, or switch crops. That choice doesn't hit your cart tomorrow. It shows up 6 to 18 months later as higher grain prices, weaker harvests, and more expensive bread, pasta, snacks, meat, dairy, eggs. The same chain reaction follows fuel. Diesel runs tractors, harvesters, pumps, trucks, and ships. When diesel is expensive, every stage of moving food costs more, from field to elevator, slaughterhouse to processor, warehouse to store. Those costs are pushed forward until they land in your cart. Feed is another silent lever. Grain and soy feed chickens, pigs, cattle, fish. When fertilizer, weather, or trade disruptions lift grain prices, feed costs soar. Farmers try to absorb it, but powerful processors and retailers limit what they can pass on. Over time, that squeeze forces smaller operations to scale down or quit. Layer on geopolitical tensions, conflicts in key gas and grain regions, sanctions, export bans, unstable pipelines. A decision an ocean away can triple fertilizer prices or choke fuel and grain flows. The inputs that make modern food production possible become costly and uncertain. Farmers stand at the collision point, rising costs on one side, powerful buyers on the other. Many small and mid-sized farms cannot survive repeated shocks. They sell, consolidate, or disappear. Each time they vanish, power concentrates into fewer hands, fewer seed companies, meat packers, grain traders, dominant retailers. That concentration shapes what is grown and sold. It narrows what ends up in your basket and makes it easier for a select few to decide which options stay affordable and which quietly slip away. Walk down any aisle, and it looks like endless competition. Different colors, logos, promises. But behind those labels, power has quietly concentrated. A handful of corporations dominate the seeds farmers can buy, the plants that slaughter and pack your meat, the companies that trade global grain, the conglomerates that own rival snack and cereal brands, and the chains that decide what gets shelf space. With fewer big players, there is less real competition and less redundancy. When their costs go up from fertilizer, fuel, labor, or climate shocks, they have both the incentive and the leverage to push those costs downstream. They can raise prices together, move in near lockstep, confident most shoppers have nowhere cheaper or more independent to turn. And they can quietly protect margins through something more subtle than a bold price hike. That is where shrinkflation becomes strategy. Instead of charging more overnight, make the box smaller. Trim ounces from cereal, chips, coffee, shave slices from cheese. Keep the design familiar. Change the fine print. Trust that busy people will not notice. Skimpflation follows. Swap higher quality ingredients for cheaper oils, fillers, additives. Stretch recipes just enough to cut costs without triggering backlash. On paper, the product still exists. On the shelf, it looks the same. In reality, you are paying more for less. This is the illusion of choice. You think you are comparing different brands of pasta, yogurt, sauce, pet food. Often, they are owned by the same few parent companies, hit by the same shocks, under the same pressure. When they shrink, reformulate, or raise prices, the aisle shifts together, leaving you to choose between versions of a worse deal. In a silent food crisis, shelves do not have to go empty. They stay full while value drains out. Portions smaller, nutrients weaker, prices higher, alternatives gone. The system absorbs stress, not by shielding you, but by nudging your expectations. And even this apparent abundance depends on one more fragile layer: the people who grow, pack, ship and stock these goods, and the trucks that move them. If that human and logistical chain falters, the illusion on the shelf breaks. Beneath the fluorescent calm of any supermarket is a workforce stretched thin. Every item on every shelf passes through human hands: farm workers planting and picking, crews tending animals, meat packers on fast lines, staff in cold warehouses sorting pallets, long-haul truck drivers on the road, receivers and stockers racing the clock overnight. For years, the system has run on low wages, long shifts, high injury rates, aging drivers, and the precarious status of many migrant workers. Schedules are tight because just-in-time logistics demands it. There is no cushion of extra staff, no reserve of drivers or packers waiting if something goes wrong. Everything assumes people will keep showing up, no matter the conditions. But people are not conveyor belts. When illness hits a plant or warehouse, lines slow or shut down. When drivers burn out, retire, or switch jobs, loads sit. When immigration rules harden, the labor that picks and processes fresh food can shrink abruptly. Strikes, protests, walkouts expose how dependent the chain is on workers treated as disposable. In a just-in-time system, even small disruptions travel fast. A few missed shifts at a formula plant, and parents see rationed cans and limit 2 per customer signs. A regional driver shortage, and egg deliveries skip stores. A temporary poultry closure, and usual chicken cuts vanish or spike. No national catastrophe required. Just no slack colliding with human limits. Unlike machinery, distressed labor does not snap back when headlines fade. Exhausted workers leave. Migrant laborers stay away. Skills and experience walk out the door. Rebuilding that capacity takes time, money, and real change. So even with enough grain in silos or cattle on ranches, turning them into food on your shelf is increasingly fragile. Now that we have traced the machinery and human links, we can see how this instability hits where you feel it most, in specific aisles, categories, and everyday foods growing more volatile. Now let's bring this down to eye level. What actually changes in your cart? Start in produce. This is where volatility shows first. You'll notice more gaps in berries, leafy greens, and citrus. Strawberries there one week, scarce or pricier the next. Lettuce that browns faster, oranges and limes jumping from toss it in to think twice. Anything grown in controlled environments or shipped long distances, salad mixes, greenhouse tomatoes, delicate herbs, carries high energy and transport costs, so small shocks mean visible price jumps and shorter seasons. Move to grains and bread. Wheat, corn, and soy are global commodities. When heat, drought, or war hits a major producer, world prices rise. That filters into sliced bread, tortillas, cereal, crackers, snack bars, pet food. You may not see bare shelves, but you'll see cheap brands reformulate with lower quality grains, more sugar, more fillers, while better options climb out of reach. A quiet downgrade in daily staples. In meat and poultry, the squeeze can feel sharper. Livestock depends on grain-based feed, steady power, and a few mega plants. When feed costs jump, disease hits herds, or a big plant shuts down, you get sudden spikes in chicken, pork, ground beef. Family pack deals thin out, purchase limits appear, affordable protein feels like it's slipping away. Dairy and eggs sit on the same fault lines. Cows and hens eat grain too. They need stable energy, transport, disease control. A shock to any of those shows up as cartons swinging in price, fewer discounts on milk and cheese, store brands replacing familiar labels, quality edging down while costs edge up. Then oils and processed foods. Cooking oils come from soy, canola, sunflower, palm crops exposed to climate hits, export bans, energy prices. When those move, snacks, chips, dressings, mayonnaise, frozen meals, and cheap ready-to-eat foods all shift. Expect more shrinkflation, smaller bags, more air, thinner portions, recipes tweaked with cheaper oils and additives while the sticker price looks stable. This doesn't slam every aisle at once. It rolls through in waves. 1 month it's eggs, then pasta, then fruit, then chicken. That rotation makes it feel like random bad luck instead of a pattern. But as each category takes its turn, the same people take the hit first and hardest, the ones with the least room in their budgets to bend. This slow-motion crisis does not land evenly. It draws a new map of hunger across a country that still insists it is well-fed. Start with households already close to the edge. Low-income families, single parents juggling multiple jobs, seniors on fixed incomes, disabled people, and the working poor whose paychecks disappear into rent, gas, and utilities. When essentials climb even a little, there is no buffer. Meat shrinks to once a week. Fresh fruit becomes a treat. Cheap starches and ultra-processed foods fill plates as a survival tactic. In food deserts, the problem compounds. There may be one small store, a gas station, a discount chain, often with higher prices and worse selection than a suburban supermarket. As supply strains and costs rise, these outlets lean harder on shelf-stable, high-margin, low-nutrient products. Fresh options thin out or show up battered and overpriced. If you live in the wrong zip code, real food costs more and is harder to reach. Even middle-income households feel constant low-grade stress, scrolling coupons, chasing loyalty deals, trading down from trusted brands, cutting quality protein, stretching meals with pasta and rice. Parents quietly skip portions so kids can eat. Groceries go on credit with a promise to fix it later. The psychological toll is quiet and heavy. There is shame in admitting the old normal cart is out of reach. People hide empty fridges, delay medical bills to buy food, or call rationing discipline. Ultra-processed, calorie-dense, nutrient-poor products become the default because they are predictable and cheap per serving, even as they erode long-term health. This is what makes it a silent crisis. Hunger rises without bare shelves. Aisles stay bright and full, but real choice disappears. People are technically not starving, yet underfed, overfed with the wrong things, trapped in a system with plenty of calories but too little dignity or nutrition. If this trajectory continues, it is not just about individual hardship. When enough people can't count on stable, decent food, the pressure spills out of kitchens and into trust, politics, and the sense that the system works at all. When food stops feeling dependable, the pressure doesn't stay in the grocery aisle. It leaks into how people see each other, their leaders, and the future. As basics grow more expensive and less predictable, frustration looks for a target. Some blame corporate greed. Others blame government, the other side, migrants, or imagined hoarders. Social feeds amplify the angriest, simplest stories. The complex reality, climate shocks, fragile supply chains, concentrated power, decades of policy gets flattened into slogans. That divide is useful for clicks and campaigns, but it does nothing to fix the system. Governments, under pressure to do something, reach for quick tools, emergency checks, food aid, price caps, calls for restraint. Abroad, export bans try to hold grain or rice at home. These moves calm tempers briefly, but can shrink global supply, spook markets and push prices higher elsewhere, boomeranging back through imports and tighter availability. In this strain, panic buying is a force multiplier. A rumor, a scary headline, one empty shelf photo shared millions of times, and shoppers who meant to buy one bag grab 5. A system with minimal slack stumbles. Local tightness becomes real gaps. Limits go up. Fear feels confirmed. Anxiety turns into visible shortage. Repeat this cycle: shock, anger, blame, quick fix, new shortage, and something deeper shifts. A fragile but functioning system starts to normalize crisis. People stop believing the supply is stable. They stop trusting reassurances. Shopping becomes an act of self-defense instead of quiet confidence. That erosion of trust is dangerous. Food is one of the few things people expect their society to get right. When that expectation breaks, it fuels volatility, extremism, and faith in reckless, simple answers. The silent crisis at the shelf turns loud in public life. This is exactly where we pivot away from panic. Seeing the structure clearly is the first leverage point. Individuals, families, and communities still have practical ways to cut vulnerability, build resilience, and push for smarter choices before the next shock hits. Now that you see the pressure building, this is where fear turns into strategy. The goal is not to panic or hoard, but to get slightly ahead so shocks feel like inconveniences, not emergencies. Start with smart buying. Look at what your household actually uses each week. Rice, beans, oats, pasta, canned tomatoes, oil, flour, coffee, spices, core proteins. When you see a decent price, buy a little extra. Not 10 carts, just a quiet surplus. Rotate so nothing expires. Over time, you build a weeks-long buffer, calmly and cheaply. Turn that into a resilience pantry. Aim for 2 to 8 weeks of normal-use foods that make real meals. Grains, proteins, fats, vegetables, flavor. Include frozen and canned produce, not just empty calories. This isn't doomsday storage. It's insurance against a bad month, a spike, or a local gap. If one item jumps or disappears, you have substitutes. Next, invest in skills. Skills are inflation-proof. Learn to cook from basics. Stretch meat with beans or lentils. Turn leftovers into lunches. Use whole chickens. Cook dried beans. Lean on what's cheap and seasonal, instead of heavily processed. The more flexible you are, the less control volatile prices have. Rebuild some local resilience where you can. Farmers markets, CSAs, co-ops, regional brands won't fix everything, and access is uneven, but supporting diverse nearby producers makes the overall system less brittle and often feeds community safety nets. Watch labels, notice shrinkflation, ingredient swaps, cheese product, diluted oils. Instead of only complaining, reward honest options or shift to simpler staples you control. Quiet refusal is leverage. Use community as a force multiplier. Split bulk buys with neighbors or family. Share storage. Trade skills. Support food banks. They are lifelines when spikes hit. Keep one calm eye on policy. You don't need to be an expert. Just note who backs antitrust enforcement, infrastructure, climate resilience, and small producers, instead of only reacting after each crisis. None of this is about bunkers or suspicion. It is about refusing to be blindsided by a slow-moving crisis and stepping into the final choice with your eyes open. Walk back into that calm, overlit grocery store. The shelves are still full, the music still gentle, the illusion still intact. But now you know how thin that illusion is, how many quiet failures have to stack up before it finally cracks. The threat is not one doomsday morning when everything is gone. It is a slow explosion, price by price, package by package, ingredient by ingredient, until what used to be normal becomes unstable, diluted, or out of reach. Seeing that pattern early is not paranoia. It is power. It lets families prepare thoughtfully, communities support each other, and citizens demand real structural fixes instead of fighting over the last carton of eggs. This silent food crisis is already in motion. But it is not beyond our influence. If we choose to see it now, instead of waiting until the shelves finally tell the truth,